Hi, I'm Boris Blade. I'm the host of Strange But Harmless, and I saw AC/DC live with an angel. Well, a few years back I broke down and told the story to someone. I never thought I would. It's quite unbelievable even for me, even if you consider I was tripping. I myself had to wonder at first, so you might as well hear it too. Somewhere back in the 90s, AC/DC was playing at Blossom Music Center, a local amphitheater. I really wanted to go see them, but due to the fact that they had played there 3 years in a row, and I'm a procrastinator, I never got around to buying tickets. What the hell, I could always go see them next year. Well, thanks to that brilliant reasoning, I never got to see Stevie Ray Vaughan live before he died. He also played Blossom several years in a row, right up until his untimely demise. You see, back in the day, I was a real rock concert fanatic. I won't try to list all the bands that I've seen right now, but stick around, those are some cool stories on their own. Maybe I'll break out my bag of ticket stubs sometime and post them to the website. I did see AC/DC live later in life, actually twice, and they're great in concert. Watching Angus Young duck walk across the stage during songs like Whole Lotta Rosie, Back in Black, and Let There Be Rock, usually during his guitar solos, his legendary schoolboy garb, although the color has changed over the years, he still favors the classic black, as do I. I've seen him in different colors, one time in the same concert. I even saw him duck walk naked one time. Don't worry, his axe covered his little boy parts completely. I would know. I was watching his guitar work. The dude wails on the axe. Brian Johnson's voice fits in flawlessly with the band. It's hard to believe that only 2.5 months after Bon Scott's death, he walked right in and took over the vocals. And not only that, but he was also responsible for writing a lot of their songs, including the title track on Back in Black album. I know what you're thinking. You always heard that Bon Scott wrote Back in Black prior to his death. I thought that too until a few years ago when I looked it up. One band member recalls hearing the drum riff being played by Bon Scott on a tape played for him by Angus Young. There were no lyrics on it, just a straightforward drum riff. So it's probably true, even though I agree with the opinion of many of the pros that I've read, that the whole Back in Black album sounds like it could have been written by Bon Scott. That's enough history for now. My producer, me, said I needed to fill in some time. I hope it wasn't too boring. How about an interesting personal fact? I almost forgot this one. Around Thanksgiving of 1976, I was visiting a good friend from church. He had raided his older brother's record collection and wanted me to hear a song from this new band. It was a record he bought in Germany while he was stationed there in the army. I grabbed the album and looked at the cover. It was a group of random people standing around in front of a motel with black bars covering their eyes, with a black hound dog sitting front and center. You guessed it, dirty deeds done dirt cheap. But that isn't possible, some of you non-AC/DC fans might say. I bought it the day it came out, around 1981. Yes, except some of you do know it was released in Europe in 1976, when I was 16. Anywho, somehow that night I ended up in bed, tripping on acid, or what passed for acid in the 90s, mostly speed cut with strychnine. No real hallucinations, but you might get tunnel vision or the occasional tracer. Of course, I couldn't get to sleep, if you know what I mean. I was laying with my eyes open, thinking that AC/DC should just about be coming out on stage. All of a sudden, I felt a shiver run down my whole body. No, not like the story where God healed me of poison oak. For real this time. The next thing I know, I'm sitting in the rafters at Blossom Music Center, and AC/DC is just taking the stage. Was I surprised? Not really. Not my first out-of-body experience, dudes. Before anyone gets their panties in an uproar, or your boxers, I sent a memo out to the world years ago, officially proclaiming dude and all of its derivatives as being non-gender specific terms. It's not my fault if you all don't check your inbox as often as you should. I'll bet your mothers feel the same way. I remember hearing the cheering crowd. Looking down on them, I thought, wow, I have a great seat. I could see all the people drinking, laughing, having the time of their lives. The smell of weed was drifting up with a cloud of smoke. Between that and the cigarette smoke, it seemed as if the amphitheater had its own atmosphere, clouds and all. The drugs could have contributed to that. I felt a presence near me. I turned and looked, and it was gone. I cannot put my finger on it now. Oops, sorry about that. And to my right, there sat a being, close to me, but not in my space close. I used to think of it as male, but on further reflection, I have no idea if it was male or female. It looked like nothing less than an angel from heaven, or so I thought at the time. It glowed, a soft glow, not a literal glow, per se, but something I could see and sense at the surface. It bobbed its head with the beat of the music. I just turned and went back to watching the concert. I don't remember everything that happened that night, but one thing that does stick out in my mind, when they played the song Highway to Hell during the encore, I remember wondering how my new friend would feel about this song. I looked at him, her, and it seemed to be jamming to the song. It noticed me looking, smiled, and told me I would hear this song when I died, or maybe it was, this song will be playing at the time of your death. Either way, I got the message. Funny thing, I don't think its lips moved. It was hard to tell because of the glow, but I seemed to hear it in my head. To this day, I get nervous whenever I hear that song, but what am I supposed to do when something triggers an autoplay in my head? It's hard to ignore, let alone turn off. I just stick my fingers in my ears and go la 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 until it goes away. Not fun when you're driving 70 miles an hour down the highway. The next day I could remember the whole thing as if it was yesterday. Well, I guess it was then. That was the last thing I remember from that night now, though. I checked the local papers and read the reviews of the show. The author's description of the stage was right on. The song list sounded spot on also. There was even a part of the show where an equipment failure caused a break, and the writer mentioned it in his review. I know this is a strange story, but a small part of me believes at least some part of it has real meaning. Whether I was dreaming, hallucinating, or astral projecting, whatever, it still holds true meaning to me. Well, I'm done already. That's not even long enough. I don't want to shortchange you good folks. How about some more band history? No. How about a little song and dance? No. How about something a little different? I needed a drink of water. The presence of God. Have you ever been in the presence of God? I have on more than one occasion. But one that really stands out is when God actually came down and spoke to our church. It was during a revival. If you grew up in a Holy Roller church like I did, then as a child, revival was a dreaded word. It meant 1 to 2 weeks of church every night, a child's nightmare. Well, as usual, for my teenage years, I sat at the back of the church and slept through the service. During the altar call, when people go for prayer at the end of the service, I would wake up and start getting ready to go home. Well, this night, something felt different. Let me set the scene. It was really loud that night due to the 25 or 30 people around the altar praying. Also, there were kids throughout the congregation playing, laughing softly, and some of the smaller children were chasing each other around the pews. In other words, it was a normal revival prayer service. All of a sudden, it got really quiet. Even the baby that was screaming bloody murder a second before suddenly went silent. I remember thinking, God just came home. You know, church being the house of God and all. You could feel his presence in the church. It was so strong, even an atheist would have known something was going on, whether they wanted to admit it or not. You could have probably heard a pin drop. Everyone was quietly waiting for something to happen. Those of us old enough to know what was going on were expecting someone to speak in tongues. We got that. There have been documented cases of people speaking in tongues in foreign languages that they have never learned. It was verified by someone in the congregation who did speak that language. I've heard people speak in tongues many times growing up, but this was different. Please don't get offended. Most times when you hear someone speaking in tongues, it sounds like a lot of gibberish. But sometimes you can hear patterns in the sounds. You can tell where sentences begin and end. This was one of those times. When he finished, he bowed his head in silence, turned and sat down. Once again, you could hear a pin drop while we all sat waiting to see if an interpretation was coming. Then another gentleman from the church stood and started the interpretation. Now, I've also heard this happen before, but normally not like this. Usually the interpretation is given in a third-person form, like the Lord thy God said this, or the Lord thy God said that. This time it came in first person. I am the Lord thy God. I have promised my people that I would be with them in the end days. I'm sad to say that as a teenager, I didn't think to try to commit the message to memory. I was more intrigued about being in the presence of God, because there was no doubt in my mind that God came down from heaven to give the people of our church a pep talk that night. The gist of the message, from what I do remember, was this: I am the Lord thy God. I have not forgotten my promise to my people. Keep the faith and I will be there for you. Tell me your needs, and I will answer your prayers for you. Come to me as a group, and I will be there. There was a lot more, but as I said, I was an uninterested teenager at the time. I'm chuckling because I swear I just got chills when I read that again. But the feeling never left me completely. Even with all the miracles I have seen in that old church, even with the healings in my own life, I still sometimes wondered about God. I think that was the night I realized that God was truly real. How could he not be? I was there when he spoke. I felt his presence. No one there that night would ever doubt the fact that God was there. Well, no one who was old enough to know what was going on, nor would they deny that God had a message for everyone there that night. Some 40-odd years later, I still know I heard God's voice that night. I have seen many miracles worked in and around my life before and since that night. Even in the most rebellious years, I never doubted the existence of God for more than an instant or two at a time. I am, after all, merely human. Subhuman, post-human, perhaps. I'm Boar's blade. I'm strange, but harmless.